Welcome to the Spotlight Omaha podcast. Here is your host, Jimmy Allen.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome into the Spotlight Omaha podcast, where we take you around the city of Omaha, introduce you to local business owners, influential figures, and people who are making an impact on our community. We are brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing. Pixel Fire Marketing is a locally owned marketing firm that specializes in website design, creating social media ads, engaging your brand online. If you could benefit from any of that, check out pixelfiremarketing.com today. Joining me inside the Pyramid Contractor studio is Gabriel Ruiz with Fiber New and Primetime General Contracting. Thanks for being here, buddy. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Walk us through what exactly, you get your hands in a lot of pots, but we'll start off with Fiber New. Can you tell us what Fiber New is and what exactly you guys do?
Sure. I can start with essentially what my 60-second is. I jokingly say what it's not. A lot of times,
Sure.
they hear fiber and they think it's like internet
Cable?
speed,
Yeah.
or like supplements. So I jokingly say I can't help you with your internet speed or your bowel movements.
Okay.
We're the experts, and that's usually what I get, a little chuckle. We're the experts with the repair and restoration of your plastic, leather, and vinyl. People still usually have questions.
Yeah, where does the passion for that come from? Because obviously that's a lot of restoration.
It is.
Where's the passion for making something that's old new again come from?
So there are a few different things that I really like about this model. It's a franchise. There are about 310 locations internationally. And one of the reasons why I was drawn to it is a lot of it's in the automotive space. I'm a car guy. I love the car stuff.
Awesome.
But even bigger than that is we're restoring something that sometimes people don't even realize is an option. So what that's doing is it's saving that end user money, which I like to save people money, and it's also avoiding it from a landfill. So there's like this much tree hugger in me. A lot of times people don't realize that, especially if they see like some of the car stuff that we do.
A car guy saving the environment's pretty funny.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of both. I like saving people money, and then also not throwing stuff out.
Sure. I was really interested. I was looking at your website and doing a little bit of research about you for this podcast. You guys do some work in like hospitals and dentist office and things like that as far as restoring the equipment they have. Is that something that's new to Fiber New that you guys haven't done before, or has that kind of always been a part of what you guys have done?
No, it's again, franchise, about 40 years in the business. And what's really neat about this model, in fact, when I looked at it, I was like, at the end of the day, if I don't succeed here, it's me, not the model. It's extremely diverse. So we're B2B, B2C, medical facilities, like you said, you touched on exam tables, waiting room tables. Yesterday, we were working on vinyl siding. If you have hail hits in vinyl siding, and instead of replacing the whole house, we can fix, 3, 5, 10, 20 vinyl hits.
Wow.
Windows, we work on a lot of bathroom tubs and shower surrounds. So it's quite literally everywhere. Like whatever you sat on today to get here, car seat, you have your arm on a center console, door panel, those are all things we work on.
The franchise model has been really interesting to me because that's a lot of the conversations we've had in here. Is people find it like there's always a reason not to start a business, right? And a lot of what we talk about is fear, but a lot of people have talked about the franchise model and how it kind of comes with built-in structure, and you have people you can bounce things off of and ask questions that you may not know the answers to. Was that a lot of the reason you went the franchise model?
How I found Fiber New is a longer story, but the short version is you're right. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And as you alluded to, I've got my hands in a few different things. I own a remodeling company. And when I break down the dollars and cents, what my overhead is month over month, originally when I had this misconception about franchises of like, oh, I'm going to have to give some stranger part of my profits.
Right.
Which to some degree is accurate with some franchises. They're all different what the franchise fee is, what the buy-in is, so on and so forth. But like you said, you're not in business by yourself. For me, for this particular franchise, there's a huge back end which has tons of support. If we get stuck,
you're essentially paying for the knowledge.
Yeah. And I'm not reinventing the wheel. It's already been produced. I mean, something as simple as a PowerPoint presentation is there. Business card design is there. All these tools are there. And if we get stuck on one of those many markets I touched on, and I only touched on a part of them, we have a back-end support where we can reach out and ask them. But in addition to that, I look at what my monthly recurring is, like for marketing and CRM, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
With this model, some of those things are included in my franchise fee. So there's a lot of value, even if I didn't have the support.
Sure.
So for me, the maths.
When we talk about taking something and making it your own, but it is a part of the franchise. And it's different for each one. How much of what Fiber New allows you to do lets you live in a creative space and be able to have a franchise that you can get across the country, but put a little bit of your own flavor to it in the Omaha area?
That's a great question. So being that this particular franchise is so diverse, we can focus on what we want. So if we only want to work on automotive, we could be pretty busy just doing that.
Sure.
And what I've learned speaking to other franchise owners, this particular franchise, I think a lot of them do. They have a regional conference. We just came back from that like last month. Some guys are really heavy in one market. Like one guy's really close to an airport. He does a ton of business for the airport.
Sure.
In the airplanes, seating, restaurants, so on and so forth. So with that said, you can customize what you want to work on for stuff that you find fun or rewarding, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's so diverse. You could focus on what you want.
That's incredible.
You can also tweak the marketing to reflect that, and
Sure.
also have your own tone.
That's exactly what I was just about to ask. When we talk about doing your marketing and making sure that you hit your market, you're from New York. You've lived in California. You've obviously spent multiple years in Omaha too. Those markets are very much different across all three. When we're talking about making sure you're hitting your target audience in the Omaha area, and I think it's fair to say that Omaha is a pretty big car town in general, maybe even just the state of Nebraska. Does that dictate how you do that marketing, trying to reach your ideal client? Because I mean, honestly, there are 3 airports within the vicinity too, with the Plattsmouth Airport, the Millard Airport, and then obviously Epley. There's a wide range. I guess I said that in a long-winded way to say there's a large net to be cast there. Oh, yeah. How much do you pay attention to the market being saturated for vehicles, the availability for planes, and kind of balance the two?
Well, that's a good question, and it sounded like you were kind of asking, like, how do you dictate what you're spending your marketing on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What we do is, this is working, whatever market we're doing well in.
Sure.
I don't want to say necessarily we're going to double down, but we're going to continue to push that because we know that we're getting an ROI. As that continues to grow, we then find areas that we're under saturated in or under penetrated in, and we'll deviate some of the marketing dollars towards that because we know, hey, we're already excelling in this sector, but we're underperforming in these other areas. And based on the conversations we have with other franchise owners, we know there's a market there. Now, each market is different. Like you said, like Sure. I've lived in LA, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Connecticut, lived in Miami. They're all different for everything, right? Food, culture, views, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Amounts of people. Sure.
Yeah, amounts of people, the way people conduct business.
Yep.
And then even just geographically, how do you get from A to B, right? So they're all different. So what do you do? I think I kind of answered that with
Yep.
you know.
What is different about Omaha compared to all those places? Because obviously there's stark differences. Why is Omaha the best place for you to conduct business at this time in your life?
So it's interesting because a lot of people ask me, they're like, "What's your favorite?" Right?
Sure.
And it depends on what it's for. Like Miami, I love the food. I'm a foodie, right?
Yeah.
Not to say we don't have incredible.
January in Miami is pretty nice too.
Yeah, it's a little better than Nebraska. Negative 40 can suck it.
But Connecticut, not necessarily.
Yeah, and Connecticut's going to be the same thing. It doesn't get as cold, but we get a lot more snow. But as far as conducting business here, food aside, and we have some great food in Omaha. I read recently, like number 3 upcoming food city in the country. Okay. And I mean, Cold Stone, number 1 from Yelp, and then someone else reviewed it number 1 somewhere else too. So like,
how about that?
Omaha's up and coming for food.
Box 16 is amazing. There's
tons of great restaurants.
Spezia over off 76. There's so many great restaurants.
I'm not sponsored by anybody.
Yeah, me either. Us either. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm just having some fun, but. As far as doing business here, I really like it because of the proximity. We can get from one end of the city to the other in 20.
Yep.
When I lived in LA, I couldn't leave my neighborhood in 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
I just had a buddy that I convinced to move up here from Daytona Beach it's been almost 3 years. And he was like, what's the best part about living in Omaha? I said, you can get everywhere in the city in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And he'd been here maybe about 3 months, and he texted me. He goes, I've literally timed everywhere I've gone in the city, and nothing's taken me over 15 minutes. I said, I told you.
Yep.
I told you. It
depends on where you live. Like, we live pretty far south in Papillion, so it takes me a little bit longer. For me to go to Elkhorn, now as the city's growing, or Bennington, it could take 45 minutes.
He lives out in Valley now, so it's a little bit of a different story. But when he was living in Omaha and working in Omaha, the commute was pretty quick for him.
Yeah, I got a buddy that lives off Center, and like everything is 10, 15 minutes from him.
Yeah, so we just moved from 84th and Center to 84th and 370 about 2 years ago. That's my least favorite thing about Papillion is it does take a while.
So we're now neighbors, and ironically, you were neighbors with my buddy before because he's right off like 90th and Center. I'm 90th and Schramm. So,
okay. Oh yeah. We're right. So we're
neighbors.
We're just on the other side of 370. We're on the north side. So, you do a ton of networking. That's how we met. Yeah. But what is it about when we started this off, you said, I want to be able to empower people to get out of the rat race and not have to trade their time for money. What is it about networking and empowering people that's so fun for you?
The conversations, the people learning their stories, hearing their stories, figuring out what makes them tick, figuring out what's important to them. At the end of the day, regardless of what's important to you, we all have a financial responsibility to pay our bills. And if we have a family, feed our family or feed ourselves, right? Have a roof over our head. With that, there are a lot of different ways you can go about making a dollar. You can be on the streets doing things not the right way, doing things that are going to wind you up in college, as we used to say in New York, wearing bracelets.
You'll end up with a roof over your head, not the one you want.
Not the one you want. 3 hots and a cot, right? That's the thing. But or you can work for the man.
Sure.
Which there isn't anything wrong with that per se either. It's
for some people.
It is for some people. Or you can really fully empower yourself, leverage the tax laws that are in place, have your own company, even if you're still working for the man and maybe you have a side hustle or you have investment real estate, whatever that vehicle is to help get you to that next step or next stage in life. I think I enjoy talking to people, hearing what their concerns, what their pain points are, and then really helping them get to that next step. So for Fiber New, I have a business partner, and that's part of my goal for this.
And I was going to ask about that because when I Googled you, there's Fiber New South and there's Fiber New North. Same company?
No, so there's a different owner for Fiber New North.
Okay.
Omaha, as a franchise, we're cut in half. A lot of cities are cut in half. We're cut in quarters depending on population.
Okay.
As we touched on, population here is a little bit lower, so this particular city's cut in half.
Okay.
But for the region that I own or we own, I have a partner
business
in
partner.
that.
Okay, gotcha.
And the goal really for that is to help get him out of that 9 to 5
routine.
And he's really good at what he does. I do this stuff behind the scenes. He's more of the
hands-on
talent, boots on the ground. I jokingly say I'm the looks and the brains.
Sure.
He's the talent.
He's the muscle. Yeah.
And
his name's
Scott Sarver.
Shout out to Scott Sarver. I just wanted to make sure we
Good
mentioned
dude.
his name.
Good dude. His birthday was Sunday, so happy
birthday, Scott.
Yeah.
And we're catching up with Gabriel Ruiz of Fiber New here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing inside the Pyramid Contractor Studio. When you're having conversations with people about what they do and why they do it, and I don't know if this is just my circle has changed and the people I'm around have changed. You mentioned the word side hustle, and it feels like there's this movement in America now to take your side hustle and make it your permanent situation. Have you noticed that as well? And what do you think is the driving force behind that?
Taxes.
Good point.
Empowerment.
Yeah.
Working for the man. Missing family functions. Like many, many moons ago, it's not exactly the same, but I used to cook. My first paycheck job was cooking.
Sure.
And as much as I loved it, and I still love it to this day, you're never around your family. Every holiday, Mother's Day, Father's Day. Mother's Day is a huge one. Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving.
You're cooking for other people's moms.
You're cooking for everyone else. You're never spending time with your family.
Yeah.
All the holidays, I was never home. So that's why I gave that up. Well, it's very similar working, depending on the job. But for most people, like they're missing Timmy's baseball game or whatever it is, right? So if you can empower yourself, whether that's working for yourself or having some passive income streams, chances are you can be creative with your time in that degree. Like, yes, you may work at 9 o'clock at night when Timmy's sleeping, but you didn't miss his game.
Sure. You have 3 daughters, and you're a husband as well. You have multiple businesses. How do you find time to balance all that? Be a dad, be a business owner, be an educator, and be a husband.
Fortunately enough for me, I have, again, great business partner, Scott.
Yeah.
So when I'm loading up the schedule, I can do that at 9 o'clock at night. He's working, the 9-ish to 5-ish working hours, so to speak. So I get creative with the time and when and where I can do that. And then for my other business, I also have some great people in place where I have the flexibility to, again, load up the schedule, be kind of stuff behind the scenes or front end, and then can put stuff on the back end. And even
is it difficult for you to do?
It can be at times. Like there's certain days where I'm like, what's going on? There's nothing. Like I feel like I'm not being productive, or there isn't anything for me to do. And there are other days I'm like, oh, I can't get everything done. So
Sure.
it's just
Somehow it's midnight.
Yeah, business ownership. It's ebbs and flows, and it's a matter of juggling. And it's not always easy, and it's not for everyone.
And it's not just Fiber New for you, as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. You have another venture also with Primetime General Construction. Why both entities, and what are the benefits to having, I guess, a second full-time side hustle?
Sure. So that's a long story. The short version of that is I was a GM for a roofing company. So rewind, before Fiber New, before I owned my own business here in Omaha, and I've had a few businesses prior to this in LA and in New Jersey and New York and whatever else. But here in here in Nebraska, I was GM for a roofing company. The writing was on the wall. It was just time for me to do my own thing again. Yeah. Originally, when I started with them, the reason why I started with them is I had an e-commerce company in California before I moved here. Was working crazy hours. I'm like, I want to be able to hang up my hat at the end of the day, work my 9 to 5, and then enjoy my family.
Yeah.
I'm not wired that way. So I'm still putting in crazy hours for someone else. So I decided, it's time, and I started Primetime General Contracting. That was in 2020. Fast forward, I was helping a friend of mine that had a body shop at the time with some business development, marketing, help them build up that business to be able to then sell. And so when I was doing that while I was building Primetime, once I transitioned out of that role, I found myself with some free time, and that was weird.
Yeah,
that was eerie.
Was it tough for you to deal with that? I know a lot of people that are very type A, that if they're sitting still, they're very uncomfortable.
Yes. So I found myself quite literally on the couch watching TV.
Yeah.
And or playing on my phone. And I'm like, this isn't, I don't feel like I'm being productive. I'm not making any money. I feel like I'm doing my family a disservice. So I stumbled upon a webinar for a different franchise, which I thought was awesome. Wound up meeting with Blake Martin. So plug for Blake. He's awesome. By the way, come to his event on Friday. It's gonna be awesome. But had a conversation with him. Long story short, went through his process. The franchise I thought was for me was not for me. It checked all the boxes in the wrong column. He's got a system where you
don't have to say what it is. Can you tell us what those boxes were that you were just like, that's not for me?
Yeah, for me, I would have had to buy a lot of stuff. Would have had to have a brick and mortar. I
gotcha.
It was investments really in the wrong things that I didn't want at that point in my life. Whereas Fiber New gave me a lot more flexibility where I didn't necessarily need a brick and mortar from day one. The goal is to have one at some point, 25, 26. We'll see what the future brings with some expansion. We also have a couple other things we're expanding on, which I can't talk about right now, but if we met in 2-3 weeks, I probably could. It's pretty exciting. Spoiler, you kind of asked a question earlier about some things, and I'll leave it at that.
Sure.
But that's how I stumbled on the franchise. I didn't want to just utilize my downtime. I wanted to utilize my downtime to not watch TV and be productive.
Well,
so
I think that's a big part of your story is, and I think it was the first question I asked you, is what's making old new again? And it seems like you enjoy taking something and kind of putting your own fingerprints on it. Is it fair to say that?
Yeah.
You obviously have had your hand in real estate for a long time as well, and that helps you kind of diversify some of the stuff you do. Why is real estate such a passion for you?
So my mom was a realtor. Again, grew up in New York. She was a rock star realtor in Westchester and Putnam County, New York. I was the whoopsie.
Not a bad spot to be.
No, not a bad spot
for either of you.
I have 2 older sisters. Sure. So when I came along, my mom brought me with her everywhere.
Okay.
So from like this year, from this tall, probably 5 years old, I've been around real estate and construction my whole life. Seeing what it's done for people in our circle, family, friends. My parents were pretty skittish. My father was a CPA. He's since passed, but he was extremely conservative. My mom used to always push him like we should buy some rentals. They had one, and I'd barely even call it a rental. Sure. So it didn't do anything crazy for the family per se, but seeing people around us seeing what it did for them.
Yeah.
I bought my first property at 22. I bought my first rental at 25. Actually, I bought my second property at 25. Bought my first for-purpose rental, third property at 25. And I wish I kept going at that trajectory. Unfortunately, I didn't. But I've got a few today
because they're a little more expensive today. Yeah.
Yeah. Although the last 3-4 years, I bought more than I ever have.
Because the interest rates.
Just opportunities.
Oh, okay. Sure.
You need a guy or a gal that's not.
They're in it for the right reason.
Yeah. I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but I don't pay retail for properties.
Sure.
And I have that luxury.
Most investment people don't.
Yeah, and I have that luxury being a remodeling contractor where I've
you
got
can do the
the
work
guys
yourself.
and gals. So I get some instant equity out of it. But again, seeing what that did for other people, knowing what that does from a depreciation standpoint on your taxes.
Yep.
Even my dad, who was super conservative when I lived here the first time, he's like, "You're making too much money. You need to buy a rental." And at that point, I was looking at one anyway, and and even after I bought one, he's like, "You take way more risks than I ever did, and I wish I did." But like you touched on earlier, it's the fear, right?
Sure.
We don't get out of our own
But
way.
it's a giant benefit to have somebody that knows, hey, I should have been doing this when I wasn't, and now I can pass it along to my son as well.
Yeah. So it's been great for me. I want more. We've got some short term, we've got some long term, a few Airbnbs in Midtown. I want more.
We're talking to Gabriel Ruiz of Fiber New here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing inside the Pyramid Contractor Studio. When we talk about the future, and you mentioned my father passed along the information to me. You have 3 daughters at home. How much do your kids know about what mom and dad do?
Quite a bit. In fact, especially since we moved here, when I was in LA and had the e-commerce company, my oldest was the only one that was around / able to
Existed.
help. Yeah. Existed and was able to help. So she used to come. I guess strike that for child labor laws, but she'd come in and help dad with some stuff.
She would sit there and watch.
Yeah, she wouldn't do anything. But all jokes aside, fast forward, we're here in Omaha. The oldest and even the 2 littles, they do come with me and they enjoy. They'll come with me for, I jokingly call it first date when I meet with a homeowner, talk about what their pain points or whatever the project is. And then even on our own stuff where they can truly roam free because it's my house that we're rehabbing, and I'll point out things, what to look for, what we're going to do. That then sparks conversations and questions with them.
Why?
Of like, why would you do this? Why would you do that? Dad, you should do this. Hey, you should move this wall. Some of the ideas are great. Some of them are outlandish. I mean,
we're not making this wall out of candy canes. I'm sorry.
They're 7, 8, and 14. So
sure.
But seeing their brains develop and ask the questions is pretty rewarding.
We've had Jay Morales on this show. We've talked to him a handful of times, and it feels like every person we talk to has a 50-mile march shirt. Why is the 50-mile march so important for you?
For me, it was partially because my dad, he served.
Okay,
I couldn't serve. I had at 14, my dream was crushed to serve in the military because I had asthma at the time. So it was my way of giving back. My dad instilled in me at a young age, respect the country, respect the police, respect the military, honor them. So this is my way of honoring them. So I did participate in 23. My 7-year-old daughter trained with me. She wanted to march with me last year in 23. My wife's like, oh,
that's a bit much for a 7-year-old.
She didn't want me to do it. Fast forward 23, I succeeded.
Yeah.
My now 8-year-old went through the training with me this year, qualifier, and participated. She finished.
Very cool.
She finished 50-mile march this past year.
What is there anything else in the Omaha area that you guys give back to that you're happy or that you're proud of? Yeah.
Actually, one thing we didn't touch on at all is Depreciating Assets, which is a car club.
Oh, okay.
That we started not purposely in 2019. We as a group, that's kind of its own podcast, its own story. But the short version is started in 19, gave it a name. We realized people are looking to us for like, what are we doing this weekend? What car events do we have going on?
Sure.
So on and so forth. So my partner in that endeavor had said to me at one point, he's like, these people are looking to us for stuff to do. I feel like we should leverage that or utilize that to do good in the community. So with besides 50-mile march, which is something I'm very passionate about, we as a car club have done stuff for what used to be Rejuvenating Women. We had some car washes, fundraising car washes for them. We volunteered at the zoo. We volunteered at Food Bank for the Heartland, park cleanups and that sort of jazz to really take that following and leverage the manpower, if you will, behind it to try to do better for the community.
What's the dream car?
I'm a BMW guy.
Okay.
My most people, it's like Lambo, Ferrari, something crazy.
Yeah.
I'm happy with Beamers. I really am. I do really like Porsches.
Most people do.
Yeah. Twin turbo R8 would be cool too, just because you can make them stupid fast.
We talk about growth. What does growth look like for any of your business ventures over the next 5 to 10 years?
So for Fiber News specifically, bringing on 2 technicians would be huge for us.
I mean, you just have the one now.
Just myself and Scott right now. Having a brick and mortar, as a goal would be something to house Fiber New, something to house Primetime General Contracting, something to house DA as a car club, as a unit, as like a clubhouse. Part of that dream or conceptual idea is to have a coffee shop in there that's car themed. So
that sounds like a big ass warehouse.
it would be a building. And part of the reason why it doesn't exist is I'm too cheap. I don't want to rent.
Sure.
It's something I could buy and then have each one of my entities pay me rent for that. But that's kind of a dream to encompass all of the things.
Gotcha. Okay. And is that something you think could be achievable in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, for sure.
That you want to?
In the next 5 years, for sure.
Where Omaha's so unique that there's just, obviously the different boroughs between South Omaha, North Omaha, Gretna, Elkhorn, Midtown, Downtown, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When we talk about, let's talk about real estate specifically for a second. What, in your opinion, is the next and upcoming neighborhood that has the ability to take off and raise the value of it?
Well, it's interesting because if you asked me that a couple years ago, my speculations or guesses would have been pretty accurate.
Okay.
When I saw Benson was changing, or even before that, and I saw Midtown was changing, you go back to 2015, I didn't realize Midtown had changed. And ironically enough, the place I have that I bought my first investment property, 35th and Leavenworth.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I bought that in 2006.
Sure.
That was okay then, right? The math was good as far as return on the investment. I was like, all right, I'll roll the dice. It may be up and coming. Maybe it's decent, whatever. And then fast forward, it changed. It changed for the better.
Creighton dumped a ton of money into that neighborhood.
Oh yeah, and they continue to, right?
Yeah.
That whole area is it's been great.
Park
Now,
Ave and Leavenworth specifically.
yeah, and now it's been great for us. It's producing as a short-term rental. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 1-bath. So we get a lot of midterm stays there too. But anywho, to answer your question, my suspicion was that Council Bluffs would start changing for the better, and it has. A lot of people thought it was crazy. They're like, no way. But it's so close to downtown that's changed.
They've got all that casino tax money too.
Yeah, that helps. But if you look at a map, the way the city is growing, it's south and west.
Right.
So for me, where I envision my hub will be south, and that's really selfish of me because I live in Papillion.
Yeah.
But again, if I look at the growth, I feel like I can get a better return.
Well, it's easier if you can work close to home, right?
Yeah, that's part of it, right? Again, I lived in LA.
Yeah.
Where it take me an hour and a half to get to the office.
Just one way. Yeah.
Those days are long gone. I don't want that in my life ever again. So and it's already continuing to rehabilitate some areas that are south of town, and values have gone up, and I think that'll continue. It has to. I mean, again, the way the city is growing, it's going to be south and west.
Yeah, I agree. Let's take everything you do: fiber new, construction, rental properties, all that. What's your favorite part about what you do?
I love real estate. I always have. Again, it goes back to mom being around it at a young age, truly seeing what long-term wealth, not just for me, but to empower my kids to change their life. Real estate.
What's your favorite part about being an entrepreneur?
Flexibility.
Okay. And
again, empowering others to see through the light of, again, it's stop trading your time for dollars, especially so many people. I mean, I'm not a very talented person. I know that. I don't have
I think several people would disagree with you, but I'll let you be humble for a minute.
Okay. There are plenty of people that have way more talents than I am, and I'll give a movie quote. There's nothing worse than wasted talent.
That's from
Bronx Tale.
I don't think I've seen that. Okay.
Oh, you got to see it. Again, growing up in New York, I love the mafia.
Sure.
Movies. But he is spot on about that. That was Robert De Niro that said that. There's nothing worse in life than wasted talent, and he's spot on. A lot of people just go through because of fear. They don't take that leap. They don't take that jump. They don't have the self-esteem, or they don't want to empower themselves, or they're too scared to empower themselves to get out of their own way and do something amazing. Like, what's your mark on life? What are you going to leave behind? What's your legacy? Working for the man? I mean, unless you're helping change something within that organization, I feel like we can all do more, and that's myself included.
Let's talk about that then for a second. If somebody out there is considering making the leap and becoming an entrepreneur, what's the first piece of advice you'd give to that person?
First piece of advice, actually another quote from another book. Have you ever read, the name's of course escaping me now, but don't take advice from those that have never done.
Yeah, good point.
Right. So I was talking with somebody yesterday on a 1-to-1, or 2 days ago on a 1-to-1, and she's like, yeah, we started this company and my parents are like, don't do it, blah, blah. I said, well, what do your parents do? Well, they work for the man. So then why are you going to take advice from them? They've never went through the entrepreneurship journey. So talk to people that have. Don't talk to people that have not. If you want to get in real estate, start talking to people that own rentals or something similar to what you want to get involved in, and get real advice from people that have done it.
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
Don't do it.
It's amazing how many people come up with that same answer. Yeah. We're kind of hitting that time of the day where we tend to shut it down. Is there anything about Fiber New that we haven't mentioned that people should know about?
No, feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk to me about any of the things we talked about today, whether it's cars, remodeling, real estate, Fiber New. I mean, a lot of those things do tie into one another, which is really cool. But if you want to grab a cup of coffee or an adult soda,
how can How can people get a hold of you?
I'm easy to find. Just, Google me, Omaha. I'm sure it'll come up.
He's tagged in the social media posts as well, so feel free to reach out. Gabriel, I really appreciate you doing this.
I appreciate you reaching out. Thank you so much.
This has been the Spotlight Omaha podcast. We'll be back in a little bit talking about what's happening around the Omaha area, cool events going on in the city. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. catching up with the folks from JQ Office Equipment about how you can get printers and different types of equipment into your office and how the warranties come along with them, courtesy of JQ Office. Hopefully you can join us tomorrow at 11. We'll be back in a little bit with what's happening in the Omaha area here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing inside the Pyramid Contractors studio.